The alarm bells in Luna Base Command Center had been ringing for 10 minutes when Admiral Tay finally arrived. She moved quickly through the corridors, her boots clicking against the metal floor. Around her, technicians and officers worked frantically at their stations. "Report," she ordered as she entered the main command room. Commander Ra looked up from his console, his face pale. "Admiral, we're receiving an alien transmission. Multiple frequencies, all languages we have on file, plus some we don't recognize." "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, showing the image of a strange being with 4 eyes and blue-scaled skin. The creature looked exhausted and desperate. "This is Captain Day of the Galactic Federation," the alien said, its voice translated by the computer. "Our worlds burn. Our children die. We need your help." Admiral Tay stared at the screen. In her 30 years of military service, she had prepared for many things. Alien contact was not one of them. "Sir, should I alert the civilian government?" Ra asked. "Not yet. Get me General Bo and Dr. Yu. Emergency meeting in Conference Room Alpha in 15 minutes. She paused, watching the alien's desperate face. "And Ra? This stays classified until we know what we're dealing with." 20 minutes later, Admiral Tay sat across from General Bo and Dr. Yu in the secure conference room. General Bo was a large man with scars on his hands from his time as a Marine. Dr. Yu was smaller, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. Both of them looked confused and worried. "Let me understand this correctly," General Bo said slowly. "An alien ship is asking for help against some kind of space bugs that eat planets?" "That's what they claim," Tay replied. "The ship is small, maybe 50 meters. It's broadcasting from the edge of our solar system. No weapons that we can detect, but that doesn't mean much." Dr. Yu leaned forward. "Admiral, this could be the most important moment in human history. First contact with an alien civilization. Or it could be a trap," Bo countered. "We know nothing about these beings or their technology." "There's only one way to find out," Tay decided. "We bring them in, but carefully. They land at Luna Base, not Earth. Full military escort, maximum security protocols." "And if they're hostile?" Bo asked. Tay smiled grimly. "Then they'll learn why this solar system has stayed independent for so long." 3 hours later, the alien ship Harmony's voice approached Luna Base under escort from 6 human destroyers. Captain Day watched through his ship's viewports as the human vessels moved around him. Even to his untrained eyes, the ships looked dangerous. Every surface seemed to have weapons mounted on it. "Captain," his communications officer said nervously, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from those escort ships. Their weapons output is significant." "How significant?" "Each of those ships could probably destroy a moon, sir." Day felt a chill. The Federation had always prided itself on building beautiful, efficient vessels, focused on exploration and trade. These human ships were clearly built for one purpose: war. The landing at Luna Base was smooth, though Day noticed the dozens of armed guards surrounding the landing pad. The humans were being careful, which was probably smart. He would have done the same thing. Dr. Yu met them at the airlock. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but Day could see the intelligence behind them. She spoke slowly and clearly, using a translation device that seemed far more advanced than anything the Federation had. "Welcome to Luna Base. I'm Dr. Yu, xenobiology specialist. We're here to listen to what you have to say." Day followed her through corridors filled with humans in military uniforms. Everyone stared at him and his crew, but not with the friendly curiosity he might have expected. These looks were calculating, measuring. The humans were evaluating him as a potential threat. The briefing room was simple and functional. Admiral Tay and General Bo were waiting, along with several other officers. Dr. Yu activated a recording device and nodded to Day. "Tell us everything," she said. So Day did. He told them about the Federation, about the peaceful alliance of 17 species that had ruled their part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. He told them about the Vex, about the swarm that consumed everything in its path. He showed them the recordings of dead worlds, of entire civilizations reduced to bare rock in a matter of days. The humans listened without interruption. Their faces showed no emotion, but Day could sense their attention. These beings were focused in a way that reminded him of predators. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Tay spoke. "These Vex, how do they fight?" "They overwhelm through numbers," Day replied. "Millions of bioships, all controlled by hive minds. They adapt quickly to our weapons and tactics." "What weapons have you tried?" Energy beams, particle cannons, fusion missiles, everything in our arsenal. They work for a while, then the Vex develop countermeasures. General Bo leaned forward. What about kinetic weapons? Railguns, mass drivers? Dee looked confused. Kinetic weapons? You mean throwing rocks? Not rocks. High-velocity projectiles, solid metal moving at significant fractions of light speed. That's primitive. Why would we use such crude weapons when we have energy systems? Bo and Tay exchanged a look. Dr. Yu made a note on her tablet. What about biological weapons? Dr. Yu asked. Toxins, diseases, nerve agents? Day's four eyes widened in horror. Biological weapons are banned by every civilized species. They're monstrous, but you haven't tried them against the Vex? Of course not. We would never. Day stopped, realizing what he was saying. His people were dying, and he was worried about being civilized. Admiral Tay stood up. Captain Day, I need to discuss this with my people. You and your crew will be given quarters here on Luna Base. Comfortable ones, she added, seeing his expression. You're guests, not prisoners. After the aliens were escorted away, the three humans sat in silence for several minutes. Well? Tay asked finally. They're telling the truth, Dr. Yu said. About the threat anyway. Those recordings are real. The Vex are exactly what they claim to be. What about their military capabilities? Bo asked. Pathetic, Tay replied bluntly. They've been fighting a war for 3 years and they haven't tried kinetic weapons or biological warfare. They're fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. Maybe both hands, Bo added. Did you see his reaction when I mentioned railguns? They think kinetic weapons are primitive. Dr. Yu looked thoughtful. They're not stupid. Their technology is advanced in many ways, but they've never had to fight for survival, real survival, where anything goes and the winner is whoever is still alive at the end. So what do? Tay asked. We help them, Bo said immediately. These Vex sound like an extinction-level threat. If they finish eating the Federation, they might come here next. And if we refuse, then a peaceful civilization dies and we probably face the Vex alone later. Admiral Tay nodded slowly. All right, we help. But we do this our way. She looked at her companions. It's time these aliens learned what happens when you ask Deathworlders for help. Outside the briefing room, Captain Day sat in his assigned quarters, staring out at the Earth hanging in the black sky. He had asked for help from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Now he was beginning to understand what that really meant. The humans had listened to his story with the cold attention of professional killers. They had asked about weapons he considered barbaric, tactics he thought were immoral. They were everything the Federation had feared they would be. But they were also exactly what his people needed. For the first time in 3 years, Day allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Captain Day had never seen anything like it in his life. From the observation deck of Luna Base, he watched Earth's response to the Federation's plea for help. In just 3 days, the human homeworld had transformed itself. Orbital factories that had been building civilian ships suddenly switched to military production. Transport vessels carried weapons and supplies to staging areas throughout the solar system. Recruitment centers reported record numbers of volunteers. Your people move quickly, he said to Commander Jin, the human officer assigned as his liaison. Jin was a compact woman with steady eyes and quick hands. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Terran Space Command, and her rank insignia showed she was experienced in ship-to-ship combat. Admiral Tay gave the order yesterday, Jin replied. Full military mobilization. Every factory, every shipyard, every training facility is now focused on war production. But you don't even know if you can defeat the Vex, Day protested. This is an enormous commitment based on very little information. That's how humans work, Jin said simply. When we decide to fight, we commit everything. Half measures get you killed. Through the observation window, Day watched another transport launch from Earth, carrying weapons to the growing fleet. He counted over 200 ships already assembled, and more were arriving every hour. Captain, I need to show you something, Jin said. Admiral Tay wants your opinion on our weapon systems. They took a shuttle to the military testing facility on the far side of Luna. The underground complex was huge, with dozens of chambers for weapons testing. Jin led him to a heavily shielded observation room overlooking a test range. We're going to demonstrate a standard railgun, she explained, gesturing to technicians who were setting up targets. These are ship-mounted kinetic weapons. Nothing fancy. The targets were chunks of metal arranged at various distances. Some were small, others were the size of buildings. When Jin gave the signal, there was a flash of light and a sound like thunder. The target simply vanished. All of them. The projectile had moved so fast that it punched through everything in its path and kept going until it hit the back wall of the range, which was made of the strongest materials known to human science. That was a light round, Jin said casually. About 50 kilograms of tungsten, moving at 12% of light speed. Our heavy rounds are much more impressive. Day stared at the empty test range. Your kinetic weapons can do that? Every human ship carries at least 4 railguns as standard equipment. Our battle cruisers mount 16. The dreadnoughts have 32. They moved to another test chamber. This one was filled with what looked like biological samples, chunks of meat, plant matter, and various fluids. Dr. Lee, a human scientist with gray hair and tired eyes, was waiting for them. Dr. Nari provided us with samples of Vex tissue, Dr. Lee explained. We've been testing various chemical agents against their biological structure. She activated a spray system that covered the Vex samples with a fine mist. Within seconds, the alien tissue began to dissolve. The reaction was violent and complete. Nothing remained but a puddle of smoking liquid. What is that? Day asked, horrified. Modified sulfuric acid with organic catalysts, Dr. Lee replied. Very effective against Vex respiratory systems. We can deploy it as artillery shells, missile warheads, or aerosol bombs. That's a war crime. Dr. Lee raised an eyebrow. Against whom? The Vex aren't signatories to any treaty. They're not even really individuals. They're parts of a hive mind that wants to eat every living thing in the galaxy. Jin led him to a third chamber, where Dr. Han was working with what looked like small metal spheres. Each sphere was about the size of a basketball and covered in sensors and manipulator arms. Combat drones, Dr. Han explained. Each one carries enough explosives to destroy a city block. They're programmed to seek out Vex bioships and detonate inside critical systems. How many can you build? Day asked. We're currently producing about 10,000 per day. When the new factories come online next week, we'll be up to 50,000 per day. Day felt dizzy. The Federation's entire military doctrine was based on precise, targeted strikes designed to minimize casualties. The humans were talking about weapons of mass destruction as if they were everyday tools. Commander Jin, he said carefully, your people understand that war has rules, don't they? Conventions about protecting civilians and limiting unnecessary destruction? Jin stopped walking and looked at him. Her expression was not unkind, but it was very serious. Captain, let me explain something about humans. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. We know all about rules and conventions, but we also know when those rules don't apply. She gestured toward Earth, visible through a viewport. That planet tried to kill us for millions of years. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, predators that could swallow us whole. We survived by being willing to do whatever was necessary. But the Federation species are civilized. The Federation species are dead, Jin interrupted. Or they will be unless we stop the Vex. Your civilization was built on the idea that violence is primitive, that intelligence means avoiding conflict. That works fine when everyone agrees to be civilized. She turned back to the viewport. But the Vex don't care about your civilization. They don't negotiate or compromise. They just consume. Against something like that, being civilized is a luxury you can't afford. Admiral Tay joined them in the observation area. She had been inspecting the weapons production facilities and looked satisfied with what she had seen. Captain Day, I need you to understand our position, she said. We're going to help you fight the Vex, but we're going to do it our way, using our methods. That means total war. Everything we have used without reservation. Admiral, I appreciate your help, but surely there are limits. No limits, Tay said firmly. When we fight to win completely. The Vex want to exterminate your people? Fine. We'll exterminate them first. She activated a wall display showing Earth's military production. The numbers were staggering. Ships, weapons, ammunition, supplies, all being manufactured at a rate that seemed impossible. In 1 month, we'll have a battle fleet of 800 ships. In 2 months, we'll have 1,500. Each ship will be armed with weapons your people consider war crimes. Our soldiers will use tactics your people think are barbaric, and we will keep building and fighting until either we win or we're all dead. Day looked at the display in amazement and horror. This is madness. No, Admiral Tay replied. This is war. Real war, the kind your people never learned how to fight. the kind we've been preparing for our entire existence. Through the viewport, another wave of transports launched from Earth's surface. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. By tomorrow, there would be twice as many. By next week, the number would double again. Captain, Admiral Tay continued, you came here asking Deathworlders for help. This is what Deathworlders do when you threaten something we've decided to protect. We don't just fight back. We make sure the threat never comes back. Day watched the ships gathering around Earth like a swarm of metal wasps. Each one was a weapon of incredible destruction, crewed by beings who had evolved in a world that never stopped trying to kill them. For the first time since the war began, he believed the Federation might actually survive. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. When do we attack? He asked. Admiral Tay smiled, and for a moment Day understood why the galaxy had classified humans as the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Tomorrow, she said. Fleet Admiral Sue launches the first battle group tomorrow. Time to show the Vex what happens when they pick a fight with Earth. The stars were dying, and Ambassador Hyan knew it was the end of everything. He stood in the command center of the Federation flagship Unity's Hope, watching the tactical display with growing horror. Red dots marked the positions of Vex swarm ships. They covered half the galaxy now, spreading like a disease across the star map. Each red dot represented death for billions of beings. Sir, we're receiving final transmissions from the Altair colonies, reported Communications Officer Kira, her blue-scaled hands trembling as she worked the controls. They're gone, sir. All 7 billion inhabitants, consumed in less than 6 hours. Hyun closed his 4 eyes and tried to stay calm. As a Cathari, his species had evolved from peaceful herbivores. Violence was foreign to them, as it was to most Federation species. They had built their civilization on trade, science, and diplomacy. War was something primitive species did before they learned better. The Vex had taught them how wrong they were. How many systems have we lost this week? Hyun asked, though he dreaded the answer. 43, sir. The swarm is moving faster now. They've learned to coordinate their attacks better. Kira's voice cracked. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in 2 months. 2 months. Hyun felt his stomach twist. The Federation had fought the Vex for 3 years now, and they had never won a single battle. Not one. The best they could do was evacuate civilians before the swarm arrived, and even that was getting harder. The door to the command center opened, and Dr. Nari entered. The small furry Veltai scientist looked exhausted. She had been working for days without sleep, trying to find some weakness in the Vex biology. So far, she had found nothing useful. Any progress, Doctor? Hyun asked, though he could see the answer in her drooping ears. None, sir. The Vex are perfect killing machines. They adapt to everything we try. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological agents, nothing works for long. They learn from each attack and become immune. She paused, looking at the star map. Sir, I need to tell you something. I've been studying our historical records looking for anything that might help. And there is one species we've never contacted. One we deliberately avoided. Nari's voice became very quiet. The humans of Sol 3. Hyun felt a chill run through his body. Every Federation citizen knew about the humans, though most tried not to think about them. The survey teams that had found Earth centuries ago had classified it as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating possible. The planet was a nightmare of extreme weather, deadly creatures, and violent geological activity. Somehow, intelligent life had evolved there anyway. The survey reports about humans were classified, but rumors spread. They said humans were aggressive, territorial, and frighteningly adaptable. They fought constant wars among themselves. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. When the Federation Council had voted on contact, the decision was unanimous. Stay away from the Deathworlders, Doctor. You know the Council's position on humans, Hyun said carefully. The Council is dead, sir. Nari replied bluntly. Chancellor Vorth died when the Vex took Kepler Prime yesterday. Most of the other Council members are gone too. The chain of command barely exists anymore. She was right. The Federation was collapsing. Their peaceful nature, which had been their greatest strength during centuries of growth and prosperity, was now their fatal weakness. They simply didn't know how to fight a war of extinction. Even if we could contact them, Hyun said, why would humans help us? We've ignored them for centuries. For all we know, they might side with the Vex, because humans understand survival, sir. The reports say they've been fighting for their entire existence. They know how to kill things that want to kill them. Nari pulled up a classified file on her tablet. Look at this. This is from the original survey of Earth. The images that appeared made Hyan's blood freeze. Massive creatures with razor-sharp teeth, storms that could level cities, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. And through it all, humans had not just survived. They had thrived. They had conquered their death world and turned it into their fortress. They have something we don't, Nari continued. They have experience with real violence, with killing or being killed. Maybe that's what we need now. Captain Day entered the command center at that moment. The Altarian officer was one of the few military commanders still alive, and his six-armed frame moved with the quick efficiency that had kept him breathing, while so many others had died. Sir, we're receiving evacuation requests from 12 more systems, he reported. We don't have enough ships to save even half the civilians. Captain, Hyun said slowly, how do you feel about a suicide mission? Day's large eyes blinked once. I'm listening, sir. Dr. Nari wants us to contact the humans of Sol 3 to ask for their help. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Like all Federation officers, he had been taught about humans in basic training, as an example of what civilized beings should never become. But he was also a practical soldier who had watched his people die for 3 years. Sir, if humans are as dangerous as the reports say, what makes you think they won't just kill us when we arrive? Because, Nari said, humans fight other humans all the time, but they also have something called pack loyalty. They protect groups they consider part of their tribe. If we can convince them that we're not their enemy, they might extend that protection to us. And if we can't convince them, Dai asked, then we die a little faster than we would have anyway, Hyun replied grimly. Day considered this. Around them, the command center continued its grim work of coordinating the Federation's slow retreat toward extinction. Finally, the captain nodded. I'll take the Harmony's voice. She's fast and has good long-range communications. If I'm going to die asking Deathworlders for help, I might as well do it properly. Take a minimal crew, Hyun ordered. Volunteers only. And Captain, if you do make contact, be honest with them. Tell them everything. If humans are really as dangerous as we think, they'll know if we're lying. 2 hours later, Day's ship launched from the Unity's Hope. It was a small vessel, barely 50 meters long, carrying only 12 crew members. Against the backdrop of the dying Federation fleet, it looked impossibly tiny and fragile. As the Harmony's voice jumped to hyperspace, Hyun watched it disappear from the sensors. He was sending his people to beg for help from the galaxy's most feared species. It was either the most desperate decision he had ever made or the smartest. Behind him, another report came in. The Vex had taken the industrial worlds of the Tau system. 6 billion more beings gone in a day. Time was running out for everyone. The Federation survivors on Kepler 442b had given up hope 3 hours ago. Dr. Nari crouched in the ruins of the research station, watching through her scanner as Vex bioships filled the sky. There were thousands of them, living vessels that pulsed with organic light and trailing tentacles that could tear apart steel. The evacuation had failed. The last transport had been destroyed trying to reach orbit. How long before they reached the surface? Asked Colonel Kim, the Federation security officer who had been coordinating their defense. 20 minutes, maybe less, Nari replied. The atmospheric processors are already starting to work. They're changing our air into something they can breathe. Around them, the last few hundred Federation survivors waited in the underground shelters. They had weapons, but everyone knew it was hopeless. The Vex ground forces were unstoppable. Every world they had taken fell the same way. Orbital bombardment followed by waves of creatures that consumed everything living. At least we made the humans understand the threat, Kim said. Maybe they'll have better luck than we did. The ground shook as more Vex ships entered the atmosphere. Through the shelter's periscope, Nari could see the drop pods starting to fall like rain. Each one carried hundreds of warrior forms that would hunt down every living being on the planet. Then something impossible happened. The Vex bioships in the sky began exploding. What? Kim started to say, then stopped as more explosions lit up the atmosphere. The alien vessels weren't just being destroyed. They were being torn apart by weapons fire that seemed to come from nowhere. New contacts on scanner, Nari said, her voice shaking. Multiple ships, human configuration. They're They're everywhere. Through the smoke and fire above them, human warships began to appear. They materialized out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already firing. The lead ship was massive, at least a kilometer long and bristling with gun turrets that spat death at the Vex fleet. Admiral Sue stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Inchin's Pride, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The Vex had been caught completely off guard. They had expected another easy conquest, and instead they were facing the full fury of the 1st Terran Expeditionary Force. "Target the command ships first," she ordered. "Cut off their coordination." "Yes, Admiral," replied Captain Wu from his position at the weapons console. Railguns are locked on target. The space battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vex relied on overwhelming numbers and biological adaptation. The humans relied on overwhelming firepower and tactical precision. When Vex bioships tried to ram human vessels, they met reinforced hulls designed to survive asteroid impacts. When they tried to adapt to human weapons, they found that humans had dozens of different weapon types ready to deploy. General Bin, commanding the Marine forces aboard the fleet, watched as his assault troops prepared for boarding actions. The Marines were armed and armored for close combat in hostile environments. Exactly the kind of fighting that Federation forces had never learned to do. "Remember, people," he announced over the comm system, "these things want to eat everyone on the planet below us. Make them regret that decision." Captain Wu's destroyer Soul's Fury took point for the boarding assault on the largest Vex bioship. Instead of trying to dock with the alien vessel, Wu did something that violated every rule of civilized space combat. He rammed his ship directly through the enemy's hull. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but human engineering had learned to build vessels that could survive almost anything. The Soul's Fury punched through 30 meters of biological armor and came to rest inside the Vex command chamber. Major Ko led her Marines through the breach, wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons that no civilized species would use in ship-to-ship combat. Flamethrowers filled the corridors with burning death. Explosive charges brought down bulkheads. Acid grenades dissolved Vex warrior forms faster than they could regenerate. The Vex had never faced enemies like this. Federation forces fought with precision and restraint, trying to minimize damage and casualties. Human Marines fought like they were trying to exterminate every living thing in the universe. "Sector 7 is cleared," Ko reported over the comm, moving to the Neural Control Center. "Copy that, Major," General Bin replied. "Remember, we need at least one control node intact for intelligence purposes." "Understood, sir. We'll try to leave something for the scientists to study." Back on Kepler 442b, Dr. Nari watched in amazement as the Vex ground assault dissolved into chaos. The bioships that had been dropping warrior forms were exploding one by one. The atmospheric processors were being targeted by precision strikes from orbit. The sky that had been black with enemy vessels was now filled with human ships and burning Vex debris. "They're actually winning," she whispered. Colonel Kim was monitoring. "Federation military frequencies. I'm getting reports from across the system. The humans aren't just stopping the Vex attack. They're destroying entire swarm fleets. The enemy is retreating from 7 different star systems." For the first time in 3 years, the word retreat was being used to describe Vex forces. Dr. Yu, now aboard Admiral Su's flagship, worked frantically to analyze the Vex specimens that the Marines were bringing back. The human research teams had been studying Federation data for weeks, and they had developed weapons specifically designed to target Vex biological systems. "The neural disruption charges are working perfectly," she reported to Admiral Sue. "The hive-mind connection is being severed. Individual bioships are losing coordination. What about the adaptation problem?" Sue asked. "The Federation said the Vex could adapt to any weapon. They can adapt to energy weapons and conventional explosives," Dr. Yu replied. "But they can't adapt to having their molecular structure dissolved by acid, or their nervous systems fried by tailored toxins, or their hulls cracked open by kinetic impactors moving at significant fractions of light speed." Admiral Sue nodded. "The advantage of being uncivilized. We use weapons that civilized people wouldn't think of." On the surface of Kepler 442b, the surviving Federation forces watched as human dropships began landing. The troops that emerged were unlike anything they had ever seen. They moved with the efficient precision of professional soldiers. But there was something else. a cold determination that spoke of a species that had learned to fight for survival. Captain Day, who had traveled with the human fleet as a liaison, met Dr. Nari at the research station. She was staring at a tactical display showing the system-wide battle, and tears were streaming down her furry face. "Is it over?" she asked. "This battle is over," Day replied. "The Vex fleet is destroyed or retreating. But the war isn't finished. Can they really do it? Can the humans actually defeat the Vex completely?" Day looked up at the sky where human ships were hunting down the last fleeing Vex vessels with ruthless efficiency. In 6 hours, the humans had done what the Federation had failed to do in 3 years. They had not just stopped a Vex attack, but crushed it completely. "Dr. Nari," he said slowly, "I think we may have underestimated what humans mean when they say they're going to help." Major Ko's voice came over the comm system as her Marines finished clearing the captured Vex bioship. "Command. This is Ko. The enemy vessel is secure. We've recovered their navigation data and communication systems. Intelligence teams are going to have a lot to work with." "Any prisoners?" General Bin asked. "Negative, sir. None of them surrendered. They fought to the last creature." "Copy that, Major. Good work. Return to the fleet and prep for the next operation." Admiral Sue studied the tactical reports coming in from across the star system. The Vex had lost over 90% of their fleet. The survivors were fleeing toward the galactic core, probably to report this new threat to their hive minds. That was fine with her. Let them report. Let the Vex leadership know that their unstoppable expansion had met something that could stop them. "Admiral," Captain Wu reported, "we're receiving a message from Earth. Fleet Command wants to know when we'll be ready for the next offensive." Sue smiled. The humans weren't just fighting to save the Federation. They were fighting to win the war completely, and now that they had tasted victory, they wanted more. "Tell Fleet Command we'll need 72 hours to rearm and refit. Then we advance to the next Vex stronghold." Dr. Nari, listening to the human communications, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. The Federation had spent 3 years in retreat, grateful for every day they could delay the inevitable. The humans had won one battle and were already planning their next attack. These Deathworlders didn't just fight to survive. They fought to make sure their enemies could never threaten them again. For the first time since the war began, she wondered if the Vex knew what they had gotten themselves into. 6 months after the first human victory, the galaxy had become a battlefield unlike anything in recorded history. Captain Day stood in the war room aboard the human command ship Busan's Revenge, watching the tactical displays that showed the current state of the conflict. Red markers indicated Vex-controlled systems. Blue markers showed human advances. The line between them shifted daily as both sides adapted to new threats. The Vex were learning. That was the problem. "Show him the latest intelligence reports," General Park ordered his aide. The holographic display changed to show detailed scans of Vex bioships. Where the original swarm vessels had been uniform, these new ones showed modifications. Thicker armor against kinetic weapons, redundant nervous systems that resisted human neural toxins, enhanced adaptation chambers that could counter biological weapons within hours instead of days. "They're evolving faster than we expected," Dr. Yu explained to the gathered officers. "Each encounter teaches them more about our methods. The weapons that worked perfectly 6 months ago are only 50% effective now." Admiral Choi, who had taken command of the 2nd Expeditionary Force, studied the data grimly. "How long before they develop complete immunity to our current arsenal?" "At their current adaptation rate? Maybe 8 months. Maybe less." The room fell silent. 8 months was not enough time to win a war against an enemy that controlled half the galaxy. "Then we adapt faster," General Park said simply. "Engineer Kim, what's the status of the new weapon systems?" Engineer Kim activated another display showing human research facilities. "The adaptive munitions program is showing promise. Self-modifying weapons that change their attack patterns in real time. The Vex can't adapt to something that's constantly changing." "What about the quantum disruptors?" "Still in testing. The power requirements are enormous, but if they work, they'll be able to destroy Vex bioships at the molecular level. No adaptation possible." Weapons Specialist Lim stepped forward. "Sir, I need to address the antimatter production situation. We're using strategic weapons at a rate that's straining our manufacturing capacity. The new charges I've designed are more efficient, but they require exotic materials that are difficult to synthesize." Admiral Choi nodded. "Do what you need to do. Cost is not a factor. Captain Day watched this exchange with growing unease. The humans were talking about weapons that could destroy planets, and they were discussing them like ordinary military supplies. 6 months of war had changed them. They were harder now, more focused on victory at any cost. Captain Day, General Park said, noticing his expression. You look concerned. General, when this war started, the Federation had rules about warfare, limits on acceptable weapons and tactics. I'm beginning to wonder if those rules had value. Your rules got your people killed, Park replied bluntly. Our methods are keeping them alive. Intelligence Officer Song entered the war room carrying classified reports. Her face showed the strain of months spent extracting information from captured Vex bioforms. The work was unpleasant but necessary. General, we've learned something important about the Vex command structure, she announced. The hive minds aren't as unified as we thought. There are competing factions within their leadership. Explain. The Vex that attacked the Federation were controlled by what they call the hunger mind, a collective consciousness, focused purely on consumption. But there are other minds. The warrior mind controls their military evolution. The builder mind manages their infrastructure. They don't always agree on strategy. General Park leaned forward with interest. Can we exploit these divisions? Possibly. The Psychological Warfare Unit has been developing ways to disrupt their mental connections. If we can create enough chaos in their command network, do it, Admiral Choi ordered. Use whatever methods are necessary. Dee felt another chill. The humans were talking about psychological warfare against a hive mind. The implications were horrifying, but he couldn't deny the potential effectiveness. The meeting was interrupted by an emergency alert. Marine Colonel June's voice came over the comm system, tense and urgent. Command, this is June. We have a situation at Proxima Centauri. Vex breakthrough force heading straight for the refugee camps. The tactical display shifted to show the Proxima system. Red dots representing Vex bioships were approaching a blue dot marking the location of Federation civilian shelters. 50,000 alien refugees who had nowhere else to run. Distance to target? General Park asked. Vex fleet will reach the camps in 4 hours. Our nearest battle group is 6 hours away. The war room fell silent. Everyone understood the mathematics of the situation. By the time human reinforcements arrived, the refugees would be dead. Sir, Colonel June continued, I have a proposal. My Marines are already in the system aboard the light cruiser Gwangju's Fire. We can't stop the entire Vex fleet, but we might be able to delay them. Colonel, you're talking about a suicide mission, Admiral Choi said. Yes, sir. But those refugees include children, families, people who trusted us to protect them. General Park looked at the tactical display. 1 human cruiser against a Vex battle fleet. The odds were impossible. How many Marines do you have, Colonel? 3,000, sir. All volunteers. All volunteers for what? To buy those refugees the time they need to evacuate, sir. Whatever the cost. Day watched the human officers exchange glances. There was no debate, no discussion of alternatives. In their minds, the decision was already made. Colonel June, General Park said, you are authorized to engage the enemy. Hold them as long as possible. Yes, sir. It's been an honor serving with you all. The comm channel closed, leaving the war room in heavy silence. On the tactical display, the single blue dot representing June's ship moved to intercept the red swarm. Dr. Nari had been listening to the conversation from her position at the science station. As a Federation citizen, she understood what was happening. 3,000 humans were about to die to save 50,000 aliens they had never met. Why? She asked quietly. General Park heard her question and turned around. Why what, Doctor? Why are they doing this? Your people don't owe us anything. You could let the refugees die and focus on winning the war. Park looked at her with something like surprise. Doctor, those people asked us for help. That makes them our responsibility. But the cost doesn't matter. When someone asks Earth for protection, we protect them. That's what we do. 4 hours later, the reports came in from Proxima Centauri. Colonel June and his Marines had held the Vex fleet for 6 hours, 2 hours longer than necessary for the evacuation to succeed. The Gwangju's Fire had rammed the lead Vex bioship when its weapons ran out of ammunition. All hands lost, but 50,000 Federation refugees were safe. General Park read the final report in silence, then activated the fleet communication system. All ships, all units. This is General Park. Today we lost 3,000 of our finest. They died so that strangers could live. They died because that's what humans do when innocent people need help. He paused, looking out at the stars where the war continued to rage. The Vex think they understand us now. They think we're just another military force to be adapted to and overcome. They're wrong. We're not fighting this war for territory or resources. We're fighting it because someone asked us to protect them. Dr. Nari listened to the announcement with tears in her eyes. She was beginning to understand what made humans different from other species. It wasn't just their weapons or their tactics. It was their willingness to die for principles that had no practical value. On the tactical display, new reports were coming in. The 3rd Expeditionary Force under Admiral Su was advancing toward the Vex Corps territories. The enemy was adapting to human weapons, but humans were adapting too. New ships, new tactics, new weapons that pushed the boundaries of what civilized beings would consider acceptable. The war was entering its final phase. One side would survive, the other would be extinct. Captain Day looked at the humans around him, these deadly, compassionate, impossible creatures who had turned the galaxy's greatest threat into a problem they intended to solve permanently. "General," he said, "when this is over, what happens to your people? How do you go back to peace after fighting a war like this?" General Park was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, Captain. I guess we'll find out together." Outside the ship's viewports, the human war machine continued its advance toward the final battle. Behind them, Federation worlds were being rebuilt. Ahead of them, the Vex were preparing for their last stand. The galaxy would never be the same. The Vex Corps system was a nightmare made real. Admiral Su stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought Soul's Vengeance, staring at the tactical display that showed their target. What had once been 3 planets and 2 moons was now a single massive biostructure, a living fortress the size of a small star. Organic corridors twisted through space for millions of kilometers, pulsing with alien life and bristling with weapons that defied human understanding. "Preliminary scans complete," reported Captain Gang from the sensor station. "The structure contains at least 40 billion individual Vex organisms. Energy readings are off the charts. Any sign of the Queen Mind?" General Park asked. "Deep in the core, sir. Heavily shielded. We'll have to fight through about 2,000 kilometers of hostile biostructure to reach it." Dr. Yu looked up from her analysis station. "General, I need to stress how dangerous this is. That structure isn't just a fortress, it's a living entity. It can regenerate damage, adapt to our weapons in real time, and coordinate defensive responses faster than any computer system. Can we destroy it?" Admiral Su asked. "With enough firepower, yes. But the cost," and Dr. Yu hesitated. "Sir, we're talking about a battle that could destroy most of our fleet." Around them, the combined human armada stretched across space like a metal galaxy. 1,500 ships of war, carrying 3 million soldiers and enough weapons to level worlds. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Captain Day, now serving as the Federation's official military liaison, watched the preparations with mixed feelings. The humans had saved his people, but the price of that salvation was becoming clear. Earth's industrial capacity was strained to the breaking point. Entire colonial worlds had been evacuated to provide resources for the war effort. Human casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. "Admiral," he said carefully, "are you certain this is necessary? The Vex are already retreating from Federation space. Perhaps we let them rebuild and try again in a few years." General Park interrupted. "Captain, I understand your concern for human lives, but this ends today one way or another." Admiral Su activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, all units. This is Admiral Su. Today we end the Vex threat permanently. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have will be committed to this battle. There will be no retreat, no second chances. We go in, we destroy the Queen Mind, and we come home." She paused, looking out at the alien fortress that filled half the view screen. "The Vex made one critical mistake. They threatened something we had decided to protect. Today they learn why that was a fatal error. The battle began with a bombardment that lit up space like a new star. Human railguns fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Antimatter torpedoes detonated in brilliant flashes that vaporized sections of the biostructure. Quantum disruptors tore holes in reality itself, unmaking Vex matter at the subatomic level. The fortress responded with weapons of its own, living missiles that could think and adapt mid-flight, energy beams that converted matter directly to plasma. gravity manipulators that tried to crush human ships like tin cans. Captain Gang piloted the heavy cruiser Incheon's Hammer through a corridor of organic defenses, his ship's hull scarred by acid and radiation. Behind him, a dozen transports carried assault troops toward the fortress's outer shell. "This is Gang to all assault teams," he announced over the comm. "I'm making my attack run now. When I breach the hull, you have maybe 10 minutes before the structure seals itself." "Copy that, Gang," replied Major Bay, leading the ground assault. "We'll be ready." Gang's ship accelerated toward the biostructure at maximum velocity. At the last second, he activated the ship's antimatter core overload and ejected in an escape pod. The Incheon's Hammer struck the alien fortress like a spear of nuclear fire, punching a hole 30 kilometers wide through its defenses. The assault transports dove through the breach before the Vex could react. Major Bay and her troops found themselves in corridors that pulsed with alien life, fighting creatures that seemed to exist only to kill intruders. The Marines advanced with flamethrowers and explosives, burning their way toward the fortress's heart. Back in space, the main battle raged across millions of cubic kilometers. Human ships fought with desperate efficiency, while Vex bioforms tried to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. The casualties were enormous on both sides. Commander Ra, piloting the experimental stealth ship Incheon's Vengeance, detected something that chilled her blood. Deep in the fortress's core, massive energy readings were building. The Vex were preparing something, a weapon that could reach across interstellar space. "Command, this is Ra," she reported. "I'm reading massive dimensional distortions near the Queen Mine's location. I think they're opening a portal." "Portal to where?" Admiral Su demanded. Dr. Yu's voice crackled over the comm from her analysis station. "Admiral, if they're doing what I think they're doing, they're trying to open a direct link to Earth's biosphere. They want to consume our homeworld directly." The tactical situation suddenly became clear. The Vex weren't just defending their fortress. They were buying time to destroy humanity's home. If Earth fell, the war would be over regardless of what happened here. "All ships, new priority target," General Park ordered. "Whatever they're building in that core, we destroy it now." But the portal was too well defended, too deep inside the fortress structure. Conventional weapons couldn't reach it in time. Commander Ra made a decision that would haunt the survivors forever. "Command, this is Ra. I'm taking the Incheon's Vengeance on a direct approach to the portal. My ship carries enough antimatter to collapse the dimensional rift, but what, Commander? But I'll have to detonate it manually. The portal's energy field will interfere with remote detonation." The silence on the comm channel lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. "Commander Ra," Admiral Su said quietly, "are you sure about this?" "Yes, ma'am. Earth is worth it." Ra's ship dove toward the fortress's core, weaving between defensive weapons and biological attacks. Her crew was small, only 12 people, but they all understood what was happening. They were flying into certain death to save their homeworld. Major Bay, fighting through the fortress's interior, watched the dimensional portal begin to open. Through the swirling energy, she could see stars that looked familiar, the constellations visible from Earth's surface. "Ra, you need to hurry," she reported. "The portal is almost fully formed." "I see it, Major. 30 seconds to impact." The Incheon's Vengeance smashed through the final layer of defenses and plunged into the portal chamber. Commander Ra activated the antimatter charges manually. Her last transmission a simple message: "Tell Earth we kept our promise." The explosion collapsed the portal and destroyed the Queen Mine's central consciousness. The dimensional rift folded in on itself, taking a significant portion of the fortress with it. Across the system, Vex bioships suddenly lost coordination as their controlling intelligence died. The battle was over, but the cost was staggering. Of the 1,500 ships that had entered the system, only 800 remained combat effective. Human casualties exceeded 200,000 military personnel. Entire colonies had been emptied to support the war effort. Captain Day found Admiral Su in the medical bay, receiving treatment for radiation exposure. The human officer looked older than her years, exhausted by months of total war. "Admiral, the preliminary reports are in," he said gently. "The Vex are finished. Their command structure is collapsing across the galaxy. Surviving bioships are going dormant or self-destructing." Su nodded without emotion. "What about our people?" "The casualty reports are significant, but Earth is safe. The Federation colonies are being liberated. The refugee camps are being converted back to permanent settlements. 1 year later, Captain Day stood in the Galactic Council chambers on New Geneva. The building was new, built to replace the one destroyed early in the war. Representatives from 23 species sat in comfortable chairs, debating trade agreements and territorial boundaries. It all seemed very civilized and peaceful. At the podium, Day addressed the assembled delegates. As Earth's official ambassador to the Reformed Federation, he had been asked to explain humanity's role in the galaxy's future. Honored delegates, he began. 1 year ago, the Galactic Federation faced extinction. We were dying because we had forgotten how to fight for our survival. We had become so civilized that we couldn't defend our own children. He gestured toward the human delegation. Admiral Tay, now serving as Earth's Secretary of Defense, and several other officers who had survived the war. These beings came from a world that never let them forget the price of weakness. They brought weapons we considered barbaric and used tactics we thought were immoral. They saved us by being exactly what we had always feared they were. The chamber was completely silent. But they also taught us something else. They showed us that true strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about being willing to sacrifice everything for something more important than yourself. He paused, remembering Commander Ra and Colonel June and all the others who had died for people they had never met. The humans didn't just respond to our call for help with firepower. They responded with something the galaxy had forgotten how to do: